podcast talking about weight loss surgery. I am not a licensed professional. Any views and or opinions expressed in the show are those of the speakers and do not reflect the bariatric community as a whole. Always reach out to a professional with any medical issues you are experiencing. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unzipped with Sheri. As always, it's yours truly. It's me, Sheri. Man, I don't even know where to begin because this year has been such an amazingly incredible journey with the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows and everything that you can think about in between. Quick little backstory on how this show even came to be. I was doing a podcast with another woman, and I knew nothing about this. I knew nothing about interviewing or, how to initiate stuff like that. And after like a month or two, I started getting into a rhythm and I started to really enjoy it. And I really loved meeting so many different amazing people and hearing other people's stories because a lot of them were so different than mine. Every single story was completely different. And just like in life and just like in kind of like the theme of this year is things would happen and the rug will get pulled out from underneath you. And I was no longer doing that show. And for the first couple of hours, I was, really sad and anxious. And I was really bummed because I'd finally found something that I really enjoyed doing. And, kudos to Eric, my husband, who basically said, why don't you do this by yourself? And I'm like, I know nothing about podcasting. I know nothing about how to start it, how to navigate it. Like I had no control over that. And his answer was just basically, we'll figure it out. And I got kind of snarky and I said, okay, maybe I'll figure it out. And I spent the next 24 hours and I learned a program and I created a name and I put a bunch of stuff together and I literally just jumped into it with both feet forward. I had no idea what to expect, how long this was going to last for. I figured it could have been a one and done. People might be like, you're batshit crazy, you're a shit show, which I honestly own that I'm a shit show. But I can't even begin to tell you like what the last 8 months or so has been like. Every single week, I got to hear an amazing story of somebody's journey with bariatric surgery, the road to how they got there, the ups and the downs. And it was so inspiring to hear how other people navigated their way to being a better version of themselves. And I didn't know how to do my last episode of the year. And so I kind of had a thought last night that, I was like, shows will do like a clip show or like a recap show. And sometimes I like things sound really good on paper and then you go to execute it and things don't go as planned. So what I did do was I put together some clips of every guest that I had this year and a little bit into their world and what our shows were like. And I kind of wanted to show that for you guys. So here we go. Just take a minute and I would like for you guys to, kind of reflect with me on what the journey has been like so far.
I'd say definitely do your research and do whatever you feel is best for you. Now, I went with the switch surgery. My best friend was going to do surgery. She ended up backing out due to some personal reasons, but she was going to go with the bypass. My brother actually did surgery last year and he chose the sleeve. You got to go with what's best for you. But make sure to do your research and definitely go into it not with sounds weird, but not with a stable mind because we're not all stable when we go into surgery because that's huge. But know that it's okay to have an adjustment period. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to mourn the loss of your previous life.
Absolutely.
Things like that? Do you have things? You've lost weight. You've been your size for quite some time. Do you still find yourself having like doing those like mental backflips for certain things where you're like, oh, I don't have to do this anymore. I can actually like tie my own shoes. Like I don't have to like do the Captain Morgan and kind of position myself.
Yes, one of them 100% is because
because I was so big, and as women, we have wider hips, we have boobs, and we take up a lot of different space.
Hell
And
yeah.
one of the things that I used to do often is I would be like in a supermarket or a store, a Target, and I would turn around to answer somebody or to look for something, and my ass would knock something off the shelf.
Oh, sure,
Or like
sure.
I like bumped in and like my boob would like knock a bottle off like the top shelf or whatever. And so even to this day, and it's been almost 8 years, once in a blue moon, I find myself being overly cautious being in an aisle to make sure I'm not going to bump something over.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've said, when you're in a parking lot and there's two cars, you have to gauge how you're going to get into the parking lot, and like how you're going to, if I go sideways, am I going to fit? Or can I suck
Right.
my gut in enough to make it with the rear view mirrors right there?
Yeah.
And even to this day, I find myself turning sideways once in a while going, no, I could have walked straight. Like, why am I
You're
fixating?
like sucking your gut in. You're like like 3 feet away from a car. It's like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna make it. I'm not gonna do it.
Or like, there's no car there. Why are you still doing it? Like, I don't know.
I'm in an empty parking lot. What's wrong with me?
Mental health for anybody is extremely important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't stress that enough. But for overweight people that have been overweight their entire life, and they go through the process of making a decision to have weight loss surgery,
Right.
you have got to be in a mental place where this is the last straw. And as you know, you've been there, I've been there, is like, this is it. This is like, I have to do this to stay alive, right? Like, that was the place I was at. And there wasn't anything that was going to just stay in my way of that. I just made it very clear to myself. And that whatever demons I had to face mental health wise, that's what I was going to do.
Usually when you're doing the evals with people, do you find that there's like a common theme in questions when people are preparing for the surgery?
Well, typically people know they're emotional eaters. A lot of times I ask about what they need to focus on in changing their diet, and a lot of people will say, well, I know I eat emotionally. So then there's a lot to dive into. And what I've kind of come up with is I call it the perfect storm. So the things that I see typically in people who are emotional eaters are people who do experience a negative mood state. So those are people who might already have depression or anxiety or another mental health diagnosis, or just have a lot of stress in their lives. So we know that they may more often experience these negative mood states. Also, people who don't have a lot of coping skills. So I might ask, oh, well, then what would you do? So now after the surgery, you're not going to be able to use food to cope with these things. So what are you going to do in place? And a lot of times people don't have an answer for it. So they don't have other outlets. They don't have coping skills that they're using regularly. So they're, sort of left hanging now that they can't eat. And then also people who consume a lot of comfort foods. So those are foods that are high in sugar, salt, bad fat, processed foods. Some people have a lot of that in their diet, and those foods all have addictive qualities.
Mm-hmm.
People who have all three of those things together are really vulnerable to continuing with emotional eating and struggling afterwards.
And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever you choose is best for you, I think is exactly best for you. And that's what you should do. And I was very much the same, where I didn't want people to talk me out of it, because there's a lot that goes into this decision. Because this isn't a magic bullet. This isn't a light switch you can flick and everything gets better. And it is not reversible. You cannot come back from this at all. And so it's something that it is your decision to make, and yours alone. And yes, you have family who's there for you, and friends who were so instrumental in this for me. And, but in the end, it's my decision. And so I have to reconcile a lot of things in my life and in my brain and in my heart. And if I can't do that on my own, then I don't need other people telling me what I should and shouldn't do, because they have to reconcile it for them as well.
Right.
I only need to reconcile it for myself, not for anybody else.
And it's so true. If I had to do it all over again, I've been very vocal about my story. I had a complete nervous breakdown. I think it was the third year in. It wasn't surgery related, but those events led to having 50 pounds of regain. I didn't think I was ever going to go back to where I was again. I'm proud to say that now I'm back to where the weight that I was at my lowest in surgery, because I just did not stop. But there were moments where you have all of these roadblocks and it deters you. But if I had to do it all over again, knowing what that middle part of the story was going to look like, and I would still do it all over again, every single bit of it, even the nausea in the after the surgery, even the embarrassing things that happened that I talk about in the book. Um, all of those things are so minuscule in the grand scheme of it all that I would do it all over again, 100%. I was going to say, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what the beginning part was like when you first started, having alcohol again?
Okay. Well, that's the rough part of having this surgery is the transferred addiction, and it doesn't get talked about. I'm even in the rooms, the support groups at the surgeon and the nutritionist. I was hushed when I started bringing it up.
Really?
I was like, oh yeah, they didn't want all these new patients knowing about that. No, 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 no. Yeah, it was, they didn't say it directly, but the leaders of the support group kind of just wanted it pushed aside. They didn't want to talk about it. And if I had known beforehand, like I did a lot of research and there was nothing in my research that had anything to do with transferred addictions.
No.
Nothing. I mean, and it's not just alcohol, the transferred addictions. There's shopaholics. There's, sex addicts. There's drugs. There's prescription drugs. There's gambling. There's, shopping. I mean, any addiction. We're trading our food addiction for another addiction because we can no longer, we can no longer stuff our stomachs with food. So what are we going to do? Because here is still here. Our addiction is still here.
Do you think that you were prepared mentally enough?
No, God, no. No, that is one thing I feel like gets pushed under the rug because whenever you go for like your psych appointment, or at least in my case, I had to go to, I think it was 2 psych appointments. My first
Really?
one, I think it was 2. My first one I went and I sat in front of a computer, never talked to a soul. They just said, "Hey, come in here." Sat in front of a computer and took a test, basically saying I wasn't suicidal. That was pretty much the test. They said, "Hey, it'll take you about 2 hours to complete this test." I said, "Okay." So I sat down. There was a bunch of like, "Do you agree? Disagree? How do you feel?" questions, and but that was the gist I got from it. It was just asking if I was suicidal, and I finished it in like 45 minutes. Like it was, I did it really quick. And so the lady was like, "Are you sure you answered all of them?" And we went back and I'd answered all of them. They were like, "Okay, well, you're done." And so the second time I went back, I actually spoke with the psychologist and, he was a really cool guy. And he said, "Hey, we looked at your test results. You seem like a healthy individual, that you can withstand the surgery and the stress that it's going to bring. Do you have any questions?" And like you asked me before, I'm really bad at coming up with questions. And so I was like, "No, not really." We spent about 15 minutes, 20 minutes going over like, "Hey, these are going to be your portion sizes. This is what you need to do if you start to get overwhelmed." But it was like a half-hour session, but that was it.
Well, once again, I had like 15 questions. I think we got to 2 of them.
Yes, it's a new high record for us.
That's a new record.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I asked you this last time, so if I did, then I'll find another question. But
Okay.
knowing your story, how you lost all this weight, you had regain, you lost it all again, you're doing things differently. If you were to have to do it all over again, is there anything that you would do differently?
If I had to redo it again, my go-to is I really do wish that I spent way more time beating myself up than I should have. Like I spent a lot of time doing it to the point where I was like, this is just your body. This is like the natural outcome of your body. It takes very super, I wouldn't say like supernatural, but like it takes a lot of effort for you to change. So like maybe you're fighting something inside of yourself that shouldn't be fought. And I was, and when I think about it, and when I learned the definition, I'm like, I was gaslighting myself like heavy duty. Um, just because like you're in one place and it's not the place you want to be, like it doesn't mean that you can't get there. And yeah, it's super frustrating when you're not there when you want to be. I didn't think it was going to take me 2.5 3 years to get to a place where I was like, I feel good again and I feel comfortable, and if I stayed here, I'm like, this is a good place for me. But I really wish I wasn't just so down on myself, because if I if I had said the things I said to myself to somebody else, like that would make me an abusive person. And just because, and I feel now, because I said them to myself, I'm like, that's still abuse. You can abuse yourself. Um, so that's what I would definitely change to be different, because that did nothing for me.
What is there anything that you would like to add or talk about? I'm just gonna give you the floor. I like just throwing you these hits right now and just kind of.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for this. Just if you're ever given the chance to be yourself, be yourself. That's the big thing. It's scary, but do it. Uh, don't let fear stop you. Courage is not an absence of fear; it's facing your fear. Getting through it. Because you can't have courage unless you have fear. So
For somebody who's giving me dirty looks, I can see it through your mind about like how this bee is like blindsiding me right now. Like you literally just threw out gold. So maybe people need to blindside you a little bit more, because it didn't give you a chance to think of any other answer, and that was absolutely perfect.
That year, there was something my counselor told me, and I love her for saying that. She asked me about my 5-year plan. Everybody asked about that. And I said, PA school and all of these things. And I'm so excited to wear this like small, cute outfit that I've been saving for 5 years. And she was like, why? And I was like, what? She's like, well, you can do it now. In 5 years, they're still going to be there. The only difference, you haven't done it. And you're going to look different. And I was like, So we went Marie Kondo. We bought the crop tops, shorts, bathing suits that were revealing with my 260.5 pounds. Why? I wanted to thank that body that has struggled so much, that had carried me for so many months, so many years. Like, I wanted to see my pictures from before and be like, I didn't hide her. I took her out as much as possible. Any beach you could think of, we'll flaunt it. And that's what I did. I had a funeral of food before my surgery, and I had a funeral for who I used to look like. I did not know how my health was going to change.
Right.
That was different. But now that I see the pictures of how I used to look, I tell my husband, like, why didn't you warn me that I looked like this? And he's like, you had a good relationship. I thought it was good. I didn't realize how much you were missing out. And I was like, yeah.
So one thing I wanted, it's just like a small little tidbit. It's just because it's so fascinating that I've never heard anything like this. You have the weirdest craving all the time.
I crave citrus fruit.
Yeah, like
constantly.
All the time.
Yeah, like right now, if you put an orange in front of me, I'd be very, very happy.
My favorite thing, before we came on, you literally made this joke. You're like, if I could take like an orange wedge and I can put it in there like I'm about to chew tobacco or whatever, and just get like this constant fix while you're doing the show, like you'd be like totally happy with that. And I'm like, I've never had anybody have such a strong, constant craving like that before.
It's like ongoing. I mean, I crave other things sometimes, but it's an ongoing thing. When they tell you that your taste buds, your cravings might change after surgery, it's true. I was shocked. I used to be able to like inhale a lot of chocolate, and now if I want chocolate, I eat like one of the Hershey's miniatures, like a half of one, and then I eat the other half later, and that's my chocolate fix, and I'm fine. But oranges and fruit, for some reason, and I think it has to do because after the surgery we have to take a lot of supplements.
Right.
Once I started taking iron prescription strength iron pills every day, all of a sudden it's like all I want is citrus. And I think that's where it stems from.
But if somebody came up to you who's thinking about having the surgery in general, what advice would you give them?
This is your journey. You can't control anybody else except yourself. So you have to be accountable for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. Don't do it for, I just want to look good. Do it because you want to be here tomorrow. What's your purpose? Because I wasn't doing it for my ex-husband. And I was doing it for my daughter, but I was doing it to be healthy for my daughter, to be here. Not because, my ex-husband was like, oh, you're fat, No, I wasn't doing that for you. I was doing it for my health, for her.
So that I could be in my best self to take care of her.
Because if I wouldn't be here today, I wouldn't have had these 2 other kids. I wouldn't have the amazing husband I have now.
And you know what? There's no shame in talking to a professional after you have the surgery. Just because you have a consultation with one before the surgery, that they want to make sure that you understand what you're doing to your body. It's a serious surgery. It's not a joke. And after the surgery, I had made the decision to continue with counseling, so I could work through any issues that I had. And if I was struggling with being impatient, and that's something I struggle with often, daily. But yeah, I think people should. I think that should be part of the requirement list, to not just have a before visit with a psychological evaluation before the fact, but also continue that. I mean, they want you to meet with nutritionists and that sort of thing, and that's all great because you need those people. But sometimes people need just to talk through stressors that might trigger old habits and stuff like that. And that's what I did. I had to, and when I talked it through, it brought me back to, this is the beginning of a new lifestyle. It's a tool. It really is a tool in your proverbial toolbox. And you need to remember that it's your most valuable tool. You'll have it for the rest of your life, and you're gonna learn to respect it, and it's gonna respect you right back.
I need to worry about how much space I take up, because how often do I worry about my physical space? Like, am I taking up too much space in the world? And that is something, like, no matter your size, no matter what size you are, you never take up too much space in this world. There's enough space for everyone. And so it's so funny that I go back to that. Am I taking up too much physical space? And am I pushing people out? Or, oh yeah, so many fears, so many.
Ken, is it okay with you if I ask a question? I just want to make sure I'm not stepping on any toes.
It depends real quick. Do you want to run it by me real quick? Just shoot me in the chat.
I'm going to shoot you in the chat real quick.
Yeah.
So I think it's safe to assume that neither of you guys made these videos with the intention that you're going to have a huge following or anything. Like Ken, it was more about the accountability. Bobby's like, hey, I'm just going to put my shit out there. In both of the cases, you guys both have kind of exploded. You guys have a ton of followers now. You're constantly growing. And so somebody had asked a question, which I thought was excellent, is you're now getting attention that you've never gotten before on a level that you never thought possible. So how do you guys humble yourselves and keep your egos in check from not letting it kind of consume you? Was that a good question? Is that a good question?
I think it's a good question. You want to go first, Bobby?
You lead the way. I'll wrap it up.
I'll lead. So this is gonna sound awful. I pretend like it's not true. Like, it's crazy to me that I see the numbers and I open it and it's definitely real. But I'm like, I like to pretend they're bots. Like, there's no way that there's that many people that care about what I have to say, let alone, we talked about this a little bit more, but if you look at the numbers in terms of they tell you male versus female, if I went back in time and went to high school Ken, was like, hey, high school Ken, when you turn 35, there's going to be 50,000 women that care about what you have to say on some sort of level. And I would be like, That's an oddly specific number, but I also don't buy it. Like, but okay, yeah, right. Later, clear mirage or psychotic break. It's one of those things like where you appreciate it. It's so cool. It's definitely different. I mean, especially, I mean, at least for me, like I always grew up like not the center of attention, not any form of attention. It was just I wasn't on people's radars, which is kind of where I wanted to stay because I was just perpetually embarrassed. Like I was always apologizing for taking up space and stuff like that. Um, it's cool. It's cool, and I really I appreciate it, and I hope that helps not let it go to my giant head. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. Like the whole aspect of like just kind of like pretending it's not real, because I mean I don't have 15,000 people at my front door. Like the only time I ever interact with these 15,000 is when I open my phone and go to that app. So life outside of the app is exactly the same as it was if I didn't open the phone.
Yes, but do you ever go to like do this next time? Because if you don't, next time you go to a store and you see like a long line, imagine if that line represented people that wanted to talk to you, and then just be like, that's like 6 or 7 people, and you're like, now multiply that by a few hundred or 1,000, and you're like, and that's like how many people are interested or think about you or interact with something that you say. It's insane. It's absolutely
I've never
insane.
thought about it that way.
Next time, definitely try it because it'll blow your mind. Yeah.
That's crazy. You had a mommy makeover.
I did.
And I literally need to know.
Yes.
So I guess question number 1 is, what made you decide to look into it?
So a big part of it was going to the gym, and I would be working out with my trainer, and he would have me like, the sled pushes that you would do.
Yes.
So I would be doing the sled pushes, and he would have me run with the sled, and all I would hear is my stomach like flapping.
Yes.
And it's so embarrassing because you're in like this big gym with a ton of people, and yeah, I know that some of them have headphones on, but my trainer didn't because he's listening to just concentrating on you while you're working out. So I was like, oh my god, that's so embarrassing, all of this flapping, and I was like, I need to do something about it. Like at this point it's just too much. I might not be at my goal weight, but it needs to go. So that was one of the main things, because I still felt like I looked good in clothes. Like that wasn't the thing. I mean, I feel like I look better in clothes now. But it was more, I was so uncomfortable at the gym. It was so bad. Just because, like, again, I can't do a jumping jack. I can't do, the plank jacks or anything like that without feeling everything kind of slapping against each other. And I'm like, all right, this got to go.
And I didn't realize, can I share with you something embarrassing?
Sure.
Just you and me and whoever's going to be watching this. But I'm an open book. So at my heaviest, I used to be a 48 triple D was my bra size.
Okay.
I literally needed a building permit for my chest to be able to walk around in public. Like my boobs were just like naturally very, very large. And then I lost all this weight, and I don't know if it's happened to you yet, but over time, certain things start to deflate a little bit, and as you're getting closer to 40, like they deflate even more. But I bought a bra and it was a 34, which I had never been a 34 in my entire life. And I was like, I almost had to keep looking at the tag to make sure I wasn't going crazy. But it was a 34 triple D. And it was a push, because, when they deflate, you kind of need something to push the girls up a little bit.
Yep.
So I recently, just to get some information, I had a consultation to have like skin removal surgery. And initially, like, I just wanted to look at my arms and possibly my stomach. But while you're there, like, we were just like shooting the shit, and I was talking to the guy, and I said, what would you recommend if I was to consider, getting the girls lifted or whatever? And then I'm not used to some random dude like touching your boobs and stuff. But he literally said that I was a D. And I'm like, I'm not a D. I'm a triple D. And he goes, oh, honey, you're a D. And I'm like, oh. And like, I felt like my whole body just like, my soul deflated as much as my boobs had. I was like, I've always taken pride that like I had like this really nice rack and it looks really good in a bra. But yeah, they shrunk a lot.
I'm sorry, I laughed. I just could see you. I could see you actually saying that right there. Like I could see you doing that.
It was like this strange man is holding my boobs, and he took away 2 of the D's from me. Like, what is happening? Fight or an argument or whatever. But I was like, but then like you go your. Did you see that?
I did.
My pen literally flew out of my hand, and I caught that shit like crouching tiger status. Like that was
awesome. I do that all the time in my office. It'll go flying across towards the.
Sitting in a room together, I would be just chatting with y'all. We'd all be best friends. Hi, my name's Jenna. We are now best friends. That's me. So, and I'm sure Sheri can vouch for that too, because ever since the first time I talked to you, it's pretty much exactly like this. It doesn't change.
Yeah, I already prepared myself. I said this episode I'm probably not going to talk very much. Jenna's going to be doing most of the talking. She's basically going to run the show today, and I'm just here for moral support and just to listen. So go ahead.
There you go.
No, I hear what you. So like, what would you do? Would you Google like 5'6", 170 pounds, and see like what kind of girl that like what kind of body that would look like? Because I used to do that crap all the time.
I'm gonna tell you exactly what I did.
Please.
I'm embarrassed. I'm gonna admit it because we're just amongst us, friends or whatever.
We're friends here. Yeah.
So I made my vision board, and because I didn't know what to compare it to, my goddess growing up in high school was Tiffany Amber Thiessen, Kelly Kapowski from Saved by the Bell.
You don't have to explain who that is. Everyone knows who
that
is.
I don't know if you knew who that was.
I know who that is.
Okay, but she was my goddess, and I loved her because she had a round face. She wasn't stick skinny. She was very curvy, but she was drop dead gorgeous. So I may or may not have hypothetically cut a picture of her in a bathing suit, and then put a picture of my head on top of it.
Oh no, you didn't put your head on. No, really?
I put my.
Why? Why did you do that?
It comes down, I think, to like the individual basis. I think that there tends to be a lot of follow up to like in those initial days with clinics, and then when we look at like the individual level, like for patients specifically, the further you get out, I think a lot of times there's less and less follow up. And I think that that's when you need it the most. And unfortunately, a lot of times that comes down to patient access for insurance as well. But now I think you see a lot more people like traveling abroad and getting surgery, in other countries. And I've heard nothing but good things. But I think, again, there's just like that lack of support for patients, unfortunately.
Yeah. Which is really unfortunate too. Now I'm curious, in your line of work, do you deal more so with like the pre-op appointments, or are you more like post-op, like maintenance?
I do, so primarily post-op. I do have a few people. So I have a group coaching program. So I recognize that Facebook groups are not the best. There's maybe some good ones out there, but I think there's a lot of bad ones. And like you said, it's like you get that like he said, she said with like what their physicians are saying. And I think there's just a lot of poor advice. So I wanted to make a private community where people could come and connect. So I work specifically with women for the most part after surgery, and we do a lot of support and education through there. But I do work with a handful of people one-on-one too.
It's a bunch of friends. We're all sitting on this couch, and it's this kind of crappy couch. So we're like way in it, but it looks terrible. And I remember thinking, is that what I look like? Because it's interesting. I kind of had reverse body dysphoria.
That was me too.
I never realized the size that I got to. And so when I was online dating, I probably was putting on these photos that like were not the best represent, but that's what I thought I looked like.
Right. It wasn't that you were trying to catfish. You just genuinely didn't see it.
I just, they're very specific angles, very specific. And I just was like, well, that's what I look like. But I really didn't realize. I didn't have mirrors in my house.
Right.
Especially not full length.
It's about, like I say this all the time, it's having real, raw, honest conversations with yourself.
Yeah.
Is where the true change happens. Because we are the ultimate salesman when it comes to ourselves. We can sell ourselves on anything in the world on whether we can or cannot do something.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to strip all that away and be honest and raw with ourselves and say, you got problems. You can't do it on your own. You can't, your mobility is limited. Your health is declining. Like my doctor told me when I went in, like my primary care doctor let me know at 44 years old I was actively dying. Like I was killing myself with the way my labs looked, my health in general, and I couldn't even argue. Like I couldn't argue with that. I couldn't sit there and go, "Yo, she had the data. She had the raw data in front of her, so I couldn't be like, no."
You have a wife. You had a child. How do you really mentally prepare yourself leading up to the surgery? Like, what kind of thoughts would go through your mind?
I mean, we had to sit down as a family really and game plan. It was just like, okay, what are the possibilities? What could happen? Like what's going to happen at this point in time? So at that point, my wife and I both work for Walmart. So it's like, okay, I'm out this time. Having a kid, who's going to help do this? Who can do that now? So it was just a lot of like, just being a good teamwork, and really having someone else. I mean, I couldn't imagine like anyone has to go through this alone. Like it's definitely in the beginning, it's physical and way above mental than I thought. I didn't even know the mental issues that I had until after the surgery. Like, wow, like things that make you just think about things.
Yeah.
So, having a good support team, and that's like discussed a little bit when you do your initiation type thing of like talking to a therapist with this stuff. And I honestly think that it needs to be a little bit more intense than what it is of like, hey, do you have someone? Yeah, all right, cool, you're good. And that's how mine was. Luckily I knew where I was going and I knew what it entailed. But the mental side of this is just insane.
Some are more powerful than others, but yours, when you were telling me about this specific NSV that you went through, I literally got chills like up and down my spine because of how visually powerful and what it represented. Like obviously,
are you talking about the recliner?
Yes, I was like, I hope you know what I'm talking about. It's your NSV.
Yes, the recliner. So the recliner I lived in for years. We got rid of it. Chris took it outside, and Chris gave me a sledgehammer, and I closed that chapter of my life, and I beat the shit out of the recliner. I beat the arms off of it. I beat the reclining.
You can say shit. It's fine. You beat the shit out of it.
I beat the shit out of that chair because that part of my life, like even for, I don't know, about almost a year after surgery, I kept that recliner because I could sit in it sideways and have my legs hang over the side because I was so much tinier than the chair when I used to take up the entire chair. So, and I told Chris, I'm like, I don't want this chair anymore. It was old and ugly, and I wasn't going back to that part of my life anymore. So Chris lugged it outside into the front yard, gave me a sledgehammer, and I beat the living daylights out of it. And then we took it to the trash.
That's why when people say that the surgery is the easy way out, man, it gets to me so bad because you know what? If you have a blockage in your heart, should you not go get a bypass?
Right.
I mean, hello, it's a tool. But yes, it works for you, especially in the honeymoon period, which my doctor told me was the first 18 months. I've heard different from different people, but your tool, you will lose weight that first 18 months, no matter what you're eating. I mean, we ate like birds,
Yeah.
But it's a tool. I mean, I gained 10 pounds last year when my dad was in the hospital dying because I was eating hospital food and I wasn't working out. I was able to lose it after he passed. I mean, but it's a tool. If you're feeding your body the wrong foods, you can eat around your restriction.
Right.
That's what my friend did. You can graze all day, whether you have sleeve, bypass, the DS, whatever, surgery, you can eat around your restriction. She went back to slider foods. Like I was a carbaholic and not a sugar person. I love to eat a bag of potato chips or French fries, rice, and I could still right now sit down and easily eat a bag of potato chips. You can gain your weight back if you're eating slider foods or, bad carbs. I eat carbs, but I eat good carbs.
So one thing that I've heard, and I was curious if this was true or not, is it true that there are different gauges or different size sleeves so some people might not have the same size sleeve procedure?
It's true. I use a 36 French bougie. A bougie is a plastic rod that we through the mouth into the stomach, and we carve the sleeve around that. So
Ah.
all my patients get that size sleeve. But for example, if there's a surgeon who does it 40 or a 42 bougie, their stomach is going to be a little bigger than the stomach that I make. Okay. 36, I found out, is actually very good. The patients tolerate small portions. Weight loss is extremely good, and they do well because I used to use 40 bougie, and
Mhm.
I've noticed since I've been using 36, the weight loss is better.
Interesting. So, do you think it's more like a matter of preference for each doctor, like like the size that
Yes,
they decide? Okay.
they're comfortable with that size and that's how they use it.
As somebody who's getting jealous, or somebody who's uh, questioning your partner's motives or whatever, my dude, my girl, if your partner says come with me, freaking go. Don't sit there
Yeah.
and be a little douche and be like, no, I don't want to go, throw a temper tantrum or something. Get up and go. They're giving you an opportunity. You got to take it, man.
Which I think that's really good advice, because one of the issues that you and I had many years ago is we were both on journeys. It was always at a different time. I would be on a health kick and I would like do the paleo thing or whatever the new thing was, and you were not into it. And I would try to coax you to come, and then you weren't
Yes.
having it. Then the tables would turn and I fall back into old patterns. And now all of a sudden you're working out and eating healthier and I'm not. And I felt like we were kept being like these two ships in the night that weren't on the same page. And I think it gets to a point too that oftentimes one of the partners will get resentful, like the person who's not working out and being healthy, because like you said, with insecurity and stuff, you get so inside your head that you're like, oh, he or she must be cheating, or oh, he or she is like doing this for somebody else, not taking into the account. No, they're probably doing it for themselves because they're tired of whatever their situation is.
Yeah.
But then like because of that resentment, then you're like moody and you're like, no, I don't want to go. And then you're creating a bigger divide because
Yeah.
now you're not even trying to even partake. But it should be telling that when the partner's saying, come with me on that walk, come with me to the gym, come with me to this thing or whatever, they're not saying like, hey, stay here, I'm going to go out and have fun. They're trying to encourage you to go with them.
Yes.
Because they want to spend that time with you.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And hell, it might motivate you to lose weight too, to get on the track, or not necessarily get surgery, but maybe start dressing us a certain way, a different way, seeing the world in through a different filter, I guess. I don't know, but definitely get involved.
We're going to get into everything, but I can already see a difference in your face since the last time that you were on the show.
I'm getting a little bit of neck bone here. I just noticed in the lighting. I'm like, what's that?
I see like this highlight of a collarbone forming already.
I just wish that my hair would fall out of my arms only.
Okay, I'm going to give you fair warning. It's coming up on top at some point.
No, it's not.
It's not coming on the arms or the legs, which sucks.
I would so far things have been a little bit reversed for me, so I would be totally fine if it falls out of the arms and the legs. Sure, why not?
Which is true. And we're going to get into everything, but Jenna has been one of those kind of like post-op anomalies of like a lot of things that could go wrong are going to go wrong, and we're going to have some speed bumps. And it was kind of like, I feel like it was kind of like the opposite of how we were going into it, with it's positive, it's going to be smooth sailing. I've watched a ton of videos. I've talked to everybody, whatever they got, I am fully prepared for it. And then
I was going to say the same thing, that I went into it with like rose colored goggles. Everything's going to be beautiful and wonderful. And I came out like, what the hell did I do?
What have I done? What do you think for you? What do you think is like your biggest motivator to stay positive and to stay on track?
I mean, I think it depends on like the aspect of my life. Like as far as like all my medical conditions and stuff like that, one of my biggest things for like staying positive and stuff is that my husband has been phenomenal and has like, we had a conversation once, and he said that he doesn't know what he would have chosen if we weren't married yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that he probably would have thought long and hard if all of this was going on before we were married. And I was like, that's completely fair. But he has 100% been there for me. and advocated for me and been my cheerleader and sat in the waiting room for, you know, now 3 multi-hour surgeries and taking care of me when I got home. Like after my brain surgeries, he had to bathe me for multiple weeks.
Right.
And what he was just like always there and everything like that. So I mean, that's a pretty good motivator for staying positive and trying to like do what I can and everything like that. As far as like bariatric surgery and stuff, I mean, for me, I just don't want to waste the tool I was given.
Yes.
Like more than anything, I don't want to waste the tool I was given. And my goal weight was set just based off what the top BMI weight I could be in the healthy range so that doctors couldn't tell me it was my weight anymore. Like that's
Right.
literally my only reason for my goal weight.
Right.
And I still had no clue. No clue. I had LASIK done on my eyes in August of 2004. And then I had my breast done in October of 2004. And then I find out on December 1st, I'm pregnant. I had no idea.
But wait a minute. Did they okay, on December 1st, did they tell you how far along you were?
Well, she made me call my obstetrician while there and schedule an appointment.
Okay.
So I called, I got an appointment scheduled for 1 week later. I went to that appointment and they told me, based on what I was telling them about cycles and everything, that I would need to have an ultrasound done to determine a due date. I'm laying there. She's, going around, click, click, measure, and everything. She looks at me and she says, "And how far along do you think you are?" And I'm like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, maybe. She says, no. According to the size of this baby, you are due in 5 weeks. What? What?
She hands me the nurse's line phone, and he's like, "Hey, Dad." I'm like, "Hey, buddy." I'm like, "You can come up now." He's like, "Oh, I'm driving to work," and I'm like, I was so heartbroken and kind of scared.
Yeah.
Like, why did he leave? Like, why did he clock out? You know what I mean? Like, why
yeah. Why have you abandoned me?
Yeah. And then he goes, "No, they called me earlier and they told me that you're good. Like, you were in recovery, and I felt like it was okay for me to head out to work." And I said, "Okay." I said, "But what about my bag and my phone? Like, you have all my stuff." And he's like, "No, it's in your room." And I was like, "Well, then where room am I in?" And I look over and I'm in this hospital bed. I kind of look to my left, and there's a window, and there's this long string with a big black balloon. And then about that time, the nurse goes, "No, your stuff's right here." Like, I guess we hadn't had that conversation.
Right.
I just wanted to call my son. I didn't say, "Is my stuff here?" I didn't even,
Right.
wouldn't have even thought to ask that. I thought I would see him carrying my stuff up, So anyways, he goes, I said, "Well, I think I'm in the wrong room then, because there's a big black balloon and it says, 'Congratulations on your retirement.'" And Braxton kind of giggles and he goes, "That's from me." I said, "But
What?
Braxton, I didn't retire." And he goes, "But your stomach did." And he was referring to, like, it was gastric sleeve. They cut a part of your stomach out and it's gone. And for some reason, in his little 16-year-old brain, like the way he articulated that and conveyed it out was like, this part of you is gone. This part of you's over. That's its retirement for that. And I thought it was very clever. And once I figured out what he was talking about, I thought it was the sweetest thing ever.
That is literally one of the coolest ways to describe this surgery is like retiring your stomach or retiring your old self. Okay, here's the thing. I didn't have anything prepared for after I played that video. So last night, I spent hours trying to figure out how to put like a little video package together of like special clips, because I really wanted to highlight every single guest that I've ever had. And long story short, things were not going as planned this morning. Things were not uploading. Things were not working. I got very frustrated. I got very overwhelmed. I didn't think I was going to be able to do the show today. I thought it was going to be a bigger shit show than I've ever claimed that I've ever been. And then I went to take a shower and put some purple in my hair. And long story short, I now have purple all over the shower floor because there was a mishap while I was in there, and shit show had continued on, and it was one thing after another. And I finally thought, what's crazy about this journey is, and we've talked about this on the show before, is we see people's before and after pictures and we aspire to have that. Like, so and so had this amazing transformation. I want to have this surgery right now and I want to have the same results. And I think sometimes we get very lost in how much story actually took place between that before and after picture. There's a lot of ups and there's a lot of downs, and there's a lot of times where you question every decision that you've ever made. Sometimes you hit stalls, or things don't go your way, or the rug gets pulled out from underneath you and you literally question everything and if this is ever going to be successful for you. And what I wanted to think was, if you continue focusing on the big picture, if you continue focusing on the goals that you have and the future life that you've always wanted to live, eventually it's going to catch up and you're going to have it, as long as you keep working at it. And literally minutes before I went live today, after the third or fourth attempt, it actually uploaded. And look, I am not naive. I know the quality is terrible. I use TikTok clips because I didn't know how to do it. I know that the audio is different in every single show. I know that the visuals are different in every single show. Some shows have been grainier than others. Some shows have been a lot more clear. And I think it's just a reflection on this whole journey this year. Like I said at the beginning, I knew nothing about doing a podcast or what to do or what's expected of you or what kind of topics that you want to cover. So instead of using fear as an excuse to not do it, I just threw both feet in the ground and I said, you know what? We're going to figure it out along the way. Hopefully people respond to it. Hopefully, the guests enjoy themselves. And that's what I've been doing every single week. And it's been such a true honor and a privilege to get to know every single guest that at one point you have a first meeting and you're like, yeah, this might be like a really cool experience. Like they have a really an amazing story or a very unique story. And what I was not expecting was to walk away from every episode with a new close relationship, like somebody to now call a friend, not just somebody who was a guest on the show and talked about their journey and whatever. I talk to these people often, like outside of the show, like we've become connected. And if anything else comes from this show, and for selfish reasons, is I have made so many amazing connections with each and every one of you. And to those of you guys who've been watching the show and commenting and contributing, and one thing, whether or not you're thinking about having this surgery, or if you're 8 years out like me, or almost 20 years out like Leonda, who was on the show, every single one of our experiences are going to be 100% different. No two stories are the same. And that was one thing that I've learned in the last 8 months is, yes, we all have the same basic fundamental elements. We, at some point in life, we got obese, whether it was that we were obese from a young age or something had happened later on. We had surgery, we had a journey on, and then a lot of it, we lose weight and then end of story. But that's not the end of the story. Just reflecting, like Becky had LASIK eye surgery and a breast lift while pregnant. Didn't even know she was pregnant. That's completely unfathomable to me. Or Sarah, who was on the show and got pregnant 2 months after surgery, which they kind of tell us is a big no-no. And Paige, who's had a lot of, medical issues and health issues along the way. And Cindy, who had a, excuse me, a life-altering experience complication post-op. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this show is I really wanted to show the reality. Like, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes there's negative side effects or bad experiences or dark times, or like Marcy earlier with transfer addiction, and Bobby, both Bobbies actually talking about the importance of mental health. I want to be as real as possible. And I want people moving forward who come across the show and watch it and hear all of these amazing stories. But the one thing that I admire about each and every one of you is, despite whatever circumstances you were thrown as a result of the surgery or as a complication or whatever life things have happened, you guys are all persevering through. You guys are all saying at the end that if you had to do it all over again, knowing what was going to happen, you guys would do it 1,000 times over. And it's very humbling for people to message me and say that some part of my journey might have inspired them. But the truth of the matter is, I am inspired by each and every one of you guys, every single story in some way or another. Like, it's so amazing to be part of such an amazing community. And everyone is so supportive and loving and giving and has such amazing hearts. And I am so unbelievably blessed that I get to have a platform where I get to give all of you guys a chance to share your story and have a voice. And it doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers on some social media, or you don't have social media, or you have 1 follower and it's just me. We all have the right to have our story heard and have people resonate with it and have the option of being able to help each other out. Because at the end of the day, like I said, no 2 journeys are the same. No 2 bodies are the same. None of us have the same amount of hair on our head. There's no 2 DNAs that they're the same. Even identical twins can both have the surgery on the same day with the same doctor and still get 2 completely different results. So I love being able to show so many different angles and remind you that we should never compare ourselves to anyone else. We should not compare our journeys to anyone else. We all have an individual story that's worthy of sharing with the world. And to all of my guests this year, like, thank you guys. So you're literally the reason why I'm here right now. You're literally the reason why I get to do this every single week. And I would love to get to the point where I can even do more shows. We have a lot of really exciting things coming up in 2023. I think we're going to do a new time slot to make it easier for people to be able to watch live and partake. A lot of you guys who've been on the show before, watch out, because I'm going to start calling in favors and having you guys come back and do some updates. I want to do some things on the road. And if anybody's watching this who's either on their journey or thinking about it or on the fence, you can talk to any one of these people who've been on the show, and they are an open book, literally and figuratively, and they will help you in any way that they can. And I will help you in any way that I can. And if you ever want to be on the show, or if you want to be a guest, or if you ever have suggestions on things that we can do in the future, please reach out to me and email me at info@sherryarcuria.com. You can go to the website, sherryarcuria.com. And I ask that you guys spread the word. I'd really like to grow this thing and be able to have, spread it on a much wider platform and encourage more people to come forward and share their stories. So you can catch us on YouTube live every single week, Unzipped with Sheri. You can catch us on Spotify and Apple, and also Unzipped with Sheri. I try to make it really easy, for you guys. But I'm very, very humbled by the entire year that I've had this year. And like I said, there's been a lot of ups and there's been a lot of downs. I went from the highest of highs in August to the lowest of lows the beginning of September. And if I had to do it all over again, knowing what the middle thing was going to be like, just like I said in the clip earlier, I would not change anything, because had those events not happened, it would not bring me here today. It would not bring me into some of the relationships that I have made over the last few months. And so, yeah, I wanted to end the show, or I guess we're going to call season 1. We're now officially over with season 1. We're almost done with 2022. I'm really looking forward to 2023, which I guess will now be season 2. And again, and Cindy, to answer your question, I have not had Gail on yet. I'm still waiting for her to reach back out, because I would like to have her on the show, but it was an issue with scheduling. But if you want, send her a message and kind of give her a little nudge. If you guys know anybody who would also be interested, send them my way. I would love to talk to them, even if they're not interested in being on the show, but they just want someone to talk to and share their story with. send them my way, because I am here for all of you guys in any way that I can. And on that note, I hope that you all have a very, very happy new year, and we'll see you next season.